Good afternoon, John.
Hey, Marty.
Been a while.
It has been a while.
In fact, I think the last time we did this was 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And so here we are in the new year, and lots going on. I've been unable to be here because I got pneumonia in December and was pretty sick for a while. And
Yeah.
I'm in recovery, and I'm recovering well enough to pick up some of my activities, including this. So I'm looking forward to checking in with you, see what's new, and talk a little bit about, I don't know, intentional living, maybe?
Intentional accountability tree process.
Yeah, maybe we could talk about those things. Uh, and I certainly have something to share about what I learned about myself in this practice while I was really sick.
Yeah.
But before I do that, let me just throw the ball to you and see if there's any introductory remarks you'd like to make.
I was in a group this morning and we were talking about the repetitiveness of, what are we going to talk about? Accountability tree. And one of the clients had been a former client, and he was saying that the last time he was at the treatment center, that he would dismiss my class because every time I talked about the same thing, and we'd already gone over that, so he didn't need it. And when he came back this time, I said, so I got a question you can ask yourself, since you're back. And I'm glad you're back. I'm so glad you're back, because the alternative could have been worse. Okay. And he said, what's that? And I said, well, what did I miss? And he goes, is that a trick question? I go, no. And to ask yourself what you missed. And then today in class, and it was his fourth class again with me, he got it that he hadn't heard it the first time, second time, third time, because he had judged it as, oh, we already did that, we already know this, how come we're not talking about something new? And he saw the value, and he actually thanked me for hanging in there and saying it over and over and over. So
You started, go ahead.
The people I work with, well, all of us, the stakes are high. The stakes are, do I live a life that was assigned to me, or do I live my life? And in the drug and alcohol treatment, that they not only live the life that was assigned to them, they find themselves in a destructive or behavior that causes separation and isolation. So, yeah. So when anybody asks me, what do you want to talk about? I say, how about accountability tree process? How about the logistics of patterns? How do I find myself in this pattern over and over and over? And so, yeah, here we are.
How about demystifying behavior
Mm-hmm.
and things? One of the things that jumped in my mind as you were sharing that story about the gentleman and his return, um, because we've all heard this uh, lament that, oh, we've heard this before and so forth. And yeah, it occurred to me that that's as if what we're talking about here is living strictly in the conceptual realm, as if it's intellectual information only.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The thing that is always a challenge for us in the podcast is to convey to the listener that we're actually talking about a process that begins in the feeling body and in the emotional world.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to use words, and words are conceptual data to convey that which is actually ultimately not conceptual. So it starts out in a feeling, an emotion, that is where all of the actual information is. And
Yes.
the mind's value is merely to take that information and then try to make sense of it for the purpose of sharing it.
Right.
But actual experience is not intellectual.
I remember the
Thinking, we're talking about feeling.
Yes, I remember the first time where I got that feelings are physical. I thought feelings were ethereal, or like you said, intellectual, or we talk about them, or I had no idea actually. But I would say, I'm feeling like you're messing with me. Well, that's not a feeling, that's a thought. So I used the language that said I'm feeling, and yet it had nothing to do with feeling at all. So,
I'd
yeah.
like to, maybe we could kick this off by sharing an experience I had in the hospital
Okay.
that I think is utterly apropos. So I had, uh, I was diagnosed with a case of pneumonia so virulent that I couldn't breathe on my own. Fortunately, I wasn't put on a respirator, but I had oxygen being forced into my mouth and my nose. I had a mask over, and uh,
Hmm.
first 48 hours that I was there, I basically couldn't do anything but lay in bed.
Yeah.
And and it was an overwhelming experience because it was an utterly shocking uh, change from anything I'd ever experienced.
Hmm.
Before that, I was just sort of bopping along in my life, and next thing I know, I'm prone in bed with IV drips and oxygen masks and so forth, and unable really to take care of myself.
Hmm.
And what I was aware of is that all I could do, and I knew it was powerful, was just to stay present with my experience laying there in bed, moment to moment, to be willing to look at and experience fear, shock, uh, a sense of helplessness. And I just was, I'm just, I remember saying to myself, I'm just going to lay here and be present,
Hmm.
see what happens. I'm not going to worry about what comes next. And my mind would try to do that. It's like, oh my God, what's wrong? What's going to happen? And I would say, okay, there's my mind doing, oh my God, what's wrong? What's going to happen? And I attribute the the sense of peace and serenity that accompanied that decision to this work.
Hmm.
I mean, when I started working with you 12 years ago or so, um, the instruction has never changed. And all those years,
Yeah.
how am I feeling? How am
Yeah.
I feeling? And oftentimes, as you implied in what you just said, we have to like learn to do that. We
Hmm.
have to actually learn to feel,
Yeah.
because what I came to understand in doing the internal excavation of my traumatized little kid, traumatized little Marty, is that there actually was a decision made at one point in my life to not feel,
Yeah.
or more accurately, to only feel certain things and not other things.
Right.
And so essentially numbing myself out to shame, to genuine terror, and allowing myself to feel anger or grief or other things that pulled me away from those feelings.
Hmm.
And that comes from, you know, the simple instruction that the accountability tree starts with: how am I feeling? And
Yeah.
where am I feeling it?
Hmm. And your willingness to be where you were when you were there in the feeling body, I heard you say, brought peace. And instead of angst, stress, worry, which freed your immune system to be where it needed to be, instead of all your energy going to um, stress, tension, worry.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the nuance: is that it wasn't that those things disappeared. It was that they were resting on this bed of serenity that came from the ability to just stay present.
Yeah.
And then I knew intellectually that as I was able to do that, that I was in a place where I would actually be taken care of,
Hmm.
that I couldn't take care of me,
Right.
but the professionals in the hospital were going to do it.
Right.
So that was another letting go. I let go of the control of my life to these strangers,
Mm-hmm.
people I never saw before, and I haven't seen any of them since,
Yeah.
and trusting that the system was going to support me in a way that I wanted to be supported.
Yes. Wow.
And then we can pull the camera back from that and recognize that's actually true of every moment of our lives. I mean, that's a
Yes.
very you've been through these situations with your heart and so forth. These are acute
Mm-hmm.
things that happen to in our lives, but sitting here, I'm still able to let go and let the systems of life take me through life. After this, I have to get in a car and go somewhere. Well, the car is going to take me there. The streets have been engineered with lights and the lanes painted and all those kinds of things. And so I'm going to be taken care of to get to
Mm-hmm.
where I need to go. And to consider that all of this work that we do rests on this bed of the universe is taking care of us. The universe does what we ask it to. So here we are, accountability tree. How am I feeling? What do I want? Trusting that when I say what I want, the universe is listening
Mm-hmm.
and responds. First of all, particular activating system within us, which is connected to the universe outside of us. And like,
Right.
wow, things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No better example than to have gone through what you went through with this ability and awareness and information that
Right.
nice deep breath. I'm feeling this. I'm here in the hospital. I'm being taken care of.
I was
Yeah.
thinking of you at the first time a doctor came in and said, how are you feeling? And so I would stop and feel, and I'd say, I'm scared shitless.
Yep.
And,
Exactly.
and it's like that
Mm-hmm.
because that's how I was feeling. And I had no desire to not tell the truth to these strangers
Right.
because this is how I'm feeling. You asked me, I'm telling you. And
Mm-hmm.
it always elicited from them some kind of version of, well, of course you are. And we're going to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes they'd say, is there a particular thing that's scaring you can we bring you some information that may alleviate your fear? Or so
Mm-hmm.
like rather than in the old days, I wouldn't have ever said that. I wouldn't even have been
Right.
aware I was scared, I was afraid.
Right. Yeah.
I would have probably said, I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we tell the truth to each other, my experience is we create an opening between each other that creates some intimacy. I mean, it's even if it's just at the level of the intimacy of medical treatment effectively done.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Exactly.
Because I think
Yeah.
that intimacy is what I want, which is related to love. I just want to be loved. And it starts with me loving myself enough to be willing to speak truth, at least to myself, about what's going on with me
Yeah.
in the moment, um, and then learn to share that with other people. So I tell you this stuff because it just is. I remember laying there the first time someone asked me that, and I noticed I was scared, and I said it, and I just had you present in my mind.
Um,
It's like I said, "Yeah, John, you taught me this."
yeah. You're so welcome. So welcome. Wow. This material, like you're explaining, is practical. It it
Exactly.
it works in every day, walking around, doing the laundry, going to the hospital, acute situations. Um, it's it's empowering. That's the word I'm looking for. It empowers people to. Well, Eckhart Tolle talks about um, people being conditioned to rail against reality. It's like the example he used was, I'm stuck on a freeway in slow traffic. So everybody's screaming and yelling at the slow traffic, railing against reality. And in your case, sick, acutely so and severely so, and not denying it, but being, oh my God, accepting it and then moving through, asking for help, feeling, allowing your immune system to the energy it needed to work with the doctors to do what it did. And I'm so glad you're here and we're talking. That was scary for me, and I can't speak for the rest of them, but I would like to say for us, that was scary.
Yeah. Thank you. And,
Mm-hmm.
you went through something similar a year or so ago, and and eventually we're all going to face our own death. And
Yeah.
so I'm assuming, I'm expecting that this practice is also prepping me for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's um, there's something there's something greater going on. We've talked about this on this podcast before than my personal life. Although my life and all of our lives an exemplar of that something that's going on, or it's a concrete condensation of this general um, experience that the universe has
Mm-hmm.
created for itself, and creating us to be part of that experience.
Right.
And I mean, for people watching this, that may just be a little bit too mystical, and that's cool. Um, so the truth is, let's just again bring it down to for the newcomer. Um, I got involved in this because things in my life weren't working. And I'd been in therapy, and I'd been an adult children of alcoholics years ago, right around the time it really got started in the late 80s, and
Mm-hmm.
here in California. Um, I've been in therapy since I was in my early 30s,
Mm-hmm.
often weekly. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, I'd like just a tenth of that money back that I spent with those people. Um, and it still wasn't working, doing
Right.
all of this stuff, and it wasn't working. Um, Involved in a men's work in my church. So now we were trying to. I was part of an effort to try to see, is there something peculiar to my being a man that is the issue? And so working with guys, mostly my age, but some younger, some older. And that's
Mm-hmm.
eventually how I met you, because some of those guys knew you and brought you in to help us with our work. And at some point in time, uh, our men's group had 5 or 6 different smaller groups that got together on a monthly basis. So once upon a time, eventually we invited you to be the facilitator of our smaller group, and that's where I finally got to be exposed to this work. I finally got to uh, have the experience with lots of ahas, and so the what I'd like to do here is talk about the practice. So we have John develop something he calls the accountability tree. It calls it that because it's on the whiteboard. It can look like a tree.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, for me, it's very simple. I'm going to tell my version and then hand it off to you, and share your understanding of it. But
Okay.
if I'm dealing with something, well, let me use the one I had the breakthrough on.
Okay.
At the time, I was dealing with a lot of debt. I owed a lot of money, mostly to credit card companies and to the IRS. And the
Mm-hmm.
IRS one was really quite disturbing, because I knew the IRS had powers to screw me out that the credit card companies didn't have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It particularly challenging is this wasn't the first time I'd gotten myself in debt. So I had done that 5 or 6 years earlier, got myself out, and then 5 or 6 years later, I found myself right back in the same position.
Right.
So I'm sharing this with you and the guys in the group. And at one point in time, you said, this is my memory, you said something like, are you willing to consider the possibility that you like being in debt? And I remember sitting there, and at the two things happened simultaneously. Number one is lightning struck, and I was like, yeah, I know that's true. And
Mm-hmm.
secondly, I had an emotional response. I started basically crying
Mm-hmm.
because I recognized this truth, and I could feel myself want to go, no, 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 that's not true. That I mean, I could actually was aware of this denial, but I
Yep.
had a deeper experience of truth,
Yeah.
of reality, and it was it was like this is no exaggeration, friends. It was like the earth ripped open, and from the ground came redemption and change, and it's like my life in that moment changed.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it wasn't intellectual. It was like I felt that this was the truth.
Yep.
And then you work with me, and so we go, first of all, what's going on, what's the truth. The truth was I was struggling with this being in debt without being aware that I was enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
Not the being in debt, but the emotional turmoil that came with it, the
Yes.
feeling tone. I mean, I was waking up in the middle of the night with angst and couldn't go to sleep, and uh,
Mm-hmm.
I would literally feel like I wanted to stick a crowbar in my head and pry my brain out because I couldn't stop the catastrophizing thoughts. I kept having pictures of the IRS coming and taking everything out of my house, and then left just a suitcase on the curb, nowhere to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Catastrophizing.
Yeah, and I didn't realize how addicted to that feeling state I was. I had no clue.
Mm-hmm.
This was like this is all opaque to me. Um, and it this the question that you asked me, and my uh, for whatever reason I had the grace to like experience that as the truth. Like you were asking me to tell a truth that I was avoiding like the plague. And it like changed everything because once I was willing to own, yeah, I like being in debt. Yeah. I'd say, yes, you're right, John. I like it. It lost its energy. It lost its control.
Yeah.
It lost its compulsion.
Yep.
And so then you said, so what do you want? So I want to feel free of this. I
Mm-hmm.
intend to be debt free. And I was debt free in a year or two and have, have money in the bank now. And it's like all changed.
Right.
So I'll stop there and just say that's kind of my experience of the tree and how it has this emotional um, by going after the emotion rather than the thought, things shift and they can shift in that moment for myself dramatically.
Yes. Um, well, um, the my experience of my own recovery and my experience working in jails was that, and my experience in adult children of alcoholics 12-step group, they have 14 traits that you can expect to fit in this behavior type. Fear of authority figures, see criticism as a threat, tend to love those people that you pity. And number 8 is addicted to excitement. Now, when Tony A first drew that up, he had addicted to fear, but he was thought better of it, or he was somebody told him to look at that and maybe find a different word. So they found excitement, which fits just as well as fear, because fear and excitement are on the same spectrum, just on opposite ends of the frequency of excitement fear. And that's where we get our adrenaline. People bungee jump just to feel the adrenaline rush, or jump out of planes, and it's for the adrenaline, or do risky things. Um, so, one of the things I found out about myself was wherever I found myself, wherever I found myself either raging or drinking or working as a workaholic, I discovered that there was something in me that wanted this result, not rationally wanted, but was in alignment with childhood trauma because I survived my childhood, and my childhood was riddled with events and situations that created fear or adrenaline, fight, flight, freeze, please. So I would recreate from my subconscious. This is not something, oh, I'm going to go out and work my life to death and miss my family. I didn't think that. And I would go to work, or something would happen. And I didn't think, I'm going to get up in the morning and somebody asks me a really simple question, I'm going to scream and yell. I didn't do it on purpose. That was the result. So I got that there's something in me, unresolved trauma, that wanted this result. Rationally, irrationally, the rationale didn't make any difference. The result was always in alignment with what happened to me as a child. So when you said, you brought the situation to me, I'm in debt again, and this is a pattern. What I know is, for me, is to own that. And I want to be in debt, which sounds completely counterintuitive, idiotic. It's like, no, nobody would. And there's something in our subconscious that would thank me for telling the truth. And that's that opening, like, oh yeah, that worked to keep me in this adrenaline state, which was familiar with my childhood, which means I survived. I'm going to survive. I'm a survivor. All subconscious. So I remember this just as well as you do. And I said, would you be willing to consider that you want to be in debt? And that's when I saw this thing happen. And then, as I remember, we went through the process. We took the accountability tree, your truth. I like being in debt. You took a deep breath, and oh my God, there was like the sloughing. You could see it. And then I intend to be debt free. That was the moment where whatever childhood trauma was attended to. Now, see, the childhood trauma doesn't know how to tell time. So it was still stuck in your subconscious in a timeless place. So you could access it, or it would be, we call it triggered or stimulated at any situation during life. And it's like now. And it's still subconscious. We still don't know the feeling frequency or the vow I took when I said, no one will ever do this to me again, screw people, no one's going to talk to me like this. Whatever that vow was, it's in my subconscious. And what we're addicted to is the adrenaline. Adrenaline happens to be, this is my opinion, my awareness, the most addictive drug on the planet. And I want to qualify that because I also believe there is no addictive substance. But there are substances like adrenaline, alcohol, drugs that can bring momentary relief. And then I find myself in a pattern, and some people get physically dependent on that. So in that case, physically dependent isn't the same thing as addicted. So anyway, that's my stickler, my pet peeve. Anyway, so we're in this behavior that gives us what we're really looking for from our subconscious. And when you own that truth, what's mine? Yours is, I like being in debt. Mine is, I am mean to the point of cruelty and enjoy it. It's like, whoa, that's demented. Wait a minute. The only way I could feel was by going to that depth of pain inflicted on somebody else. So when I own that, I'm mean to the point of cruelty and enjoy. It's like there was this big, like you said, no, and yet this, oh my God, this, I don't have to do that anymore at the same moment. Truth is, yes, and it's the beginning of the end of whatever that is. For you, it was debt. For me, it was cruelty. Um, and it's then we say the truth, take a breath. That truth initiates the emotional connection to the trauma, which releases the trauma, reframes it. Whatever happened to you as a child is always going to have had happened to you as a child. Whatever happened to me as a child is always going to have happened to me as a child. My perception of it, my healing of it is what reframes it so that now it's not a block. Now it's not stuck. Now it's free to move through me so that I can experience life in a different way instead of from that stuck place. The accountability tree is essential in awareness. And what I mean by that is I was told by one of my healers about being present. How do you be present? And she said, 3 questions. You answer 3 questions. The 3 questions are, who am I? Where am I? What do I want? The who am I is a spiritual, powerful being, spirit having a human experience. Who am I? I'm a gentle, loving, empowering man. And that's one of the exercises I take people through is to identify their essence. And we're talking about the where am I? This is the devious one. This is the one right where you're at. And this thing we call denial, which sometimes we use as an accusation, like, oh, you're in denial. No, denial means whatever's here is coming from, I don't know, subconscious. So I don't know. Denial means simply, I'm not aware. When that truth statement happens, the awareness is there. I am right, alcoholic, workaholic, rager. Oh, I intend to be kind. I intend to be loving. I intend to look after my own health. And me working 24/7 is not healthy. I intend to say no to overtime. All that stuff becomes available to me in the statement of truth. That statement of truth, yours is, I like being in debt. Mine was, I mean, to the point of cruelty, has encoded in it on a frequency level the information that informed the decision to be here now, which is you liking debt, me to the point of cruelty and enjoying it. When that's validated, it goes, thank you for listening. I've been working so hard to keep you alive the best way I could. What do you want? I intend to be kind. I intend to be debt free. I intend to live the life that is my life, not my parents or my societies or what people are telling me. Be a good boy, be a good girl. I intend to live the adventure that is my life. And this opening happens. And then we do it again and we do it again because there's a lot. The trauma, one of the words I use to describe the trauma is legion. And it's complex. Mate says this, and I'm glad he said it because that's what I believe already. Any issue that I'm finding myself in that is untenable or a pattern that I don't want to be in is due to unresolved complex post-traumatic stress. And then that statement of truth addresses the complex post-traumatic subconscious stuffed emotion, and you feel it sloughing. It just like goes. And what's happening is that pain, whatever happened in the child, that pain is processed through my body and then opening to, oh, what do I get to have something different. Let's name it. I intend to be kind. I intend to be debt free. I intend to be gracious. And then that intention goes back into the subconscious with the command to manifest this for me in spite of me, just like it manifested for me, meanness to the point of cruelty in spite of me. Hold on. Okay. I think my daughter's coming home, so you're going to hear the dogs barking. I was pretty much done anyway.
Well, it's interesting. There's so much there to unpack. So there's several things. Number one, the I think that the issue that you last said is really, it's a powerful one to re-emphasize, because oftentimes, and that is that this this traumatic, energetic, that's unhealed trauma essentially,
Yeah, yes,
is the result of a lengthy period of time during which these traumas were inflicted serially. It's
yes,
not just a one-off. Now, some
right.
people had really, really horrible things like sexual trauma or physical beating, when they were children or infants, and those are like really, really powerful. You can at least understand that
Hmm.
that was a one-time or two-time or three-time thing that was so awful that
Yeah.
you appreciate why someone would experience that years later. But for most of us, it's what I call the trauma of a thousand paper cuts. It's the little slights that happen day after day. Who do you think you are? Get out of my way. Or you come downstairs in the morning and mom's not there.
Right,
No explanation.
right.
Whatever. There's this series of things, and each one of them, for this my experience as a kid, each each one of them did not get any healing.
Right.
They just got stuffed in the psyche. So um, I I have several people that I'm working with who still, they've been doing this work for some time, and they experience these outbursts of grief, and it freaks them out because there's sort of a judgment, I should be done with this by now. And so, would you be willing to address that?
That's absolutely correct. That's what I mean by legion. There's so many
You mean,
people ask me
go ahead.
how many times do you think I was traumatized? And I said, well, okay, how many minutes in a day? How long were you exposed to somebody turning their back on you? Hold on one second. Okay. How many times were you exposed to um, your father holding an energy that you didn't understand? And part of this sexual abuse was vicariously. It's like it didn't happen to me, it happened around me. And it could have been a derogatory remark my dad said about my mom. It could have been in the way he hit her, and because he did that a lot, he hit her. Um, so those are vicarious sexual abuses, which I take in, and I don't know what to do with my being a man. My dad's a man. I'm a man. He's an asshole. Oh, guess what? I must be one too because I'm the man. It's like, and then I remember my mother saying, "It's a man's world," and I didn't understand what she was saying. Um, and I thought, at first, I thought, well, that's good because I'm a man. And then I felt her energy of being demeaned, diminished, or her sadness around that. So it's like, how do you reconcile that? You don't. I didn't. I stuffed it, and then it came out in my relationships, in a behavior that was in alignment with that, either vicarious, sexual, physical, emotional abuse that really didn't happen to me, but it happened around me. And I had to sort it out. So it gets impacted. Um, and this process of just saying the truth of who am I, what do I want, where I am, that truth goes in and touches, I don't know how many events or instances or situations where that was reinforced. The subconscious mind processes 4 million bits of information per second. So when I say the truth, I mean, take a breath, that's about 2 seconds. Wow. Wow. And then that sloughing, I don't have to know each specific event. I do know I was subjected to tremendous amounts of emotional and verbal, and for me, physical vicarious abuse. So, in that second and a half, 2 seconds, the healing that takes place is also myriad and legion. And I say I intend to be kind which is a directive now to this mechanism that created the adrenaline and the survival. My survival is now dependent on, or has an ingredient of, kindness. So my behavior starts to be different. It changes. And I'm not saying better in the long run. Yeah, in the long run better, but sometimes in the moment I would realize how inundated I was with this. And it was like people say better happy. Well, my better at that time was extremely sad and disappointed, maybe even devastated at the immensity of what was going on internally with me. So that devastation, that feeling of devastation, is another emotion that validates the devastation of my childhood. And then I say, I intend to heal. I intend to go in there and get this. I mean, I got like, no, I'm not, I know where it is. I'm going in there. I'm going in there. And every time I get a chance, if I see myself in judgment or blame or criticism, self or others, oh, another opportunity to go get more of that damaged little boy and bring him out and then become who I am. And it's so, what's a good word? Cool. It's cool. It's magnificent. It's healing. And I get to bring it to other people that most of the people don't even know that they need it or have it, or they're struggling the best they can. Uh, I'm a, I'm a blessed man. I am truly, truly a blessed man. So,
When I first started getting into this work, I brought a conviction. I don't know where it came from, and I don't care, but I've always had this conviction, even before I knew this stuff, even before I started uh, mature spiritual journey, which didn't happen until I was over 30, um, maybe not even until I was 40. But I always had this sense that every single person wants this, that every single person wants to be a self-conscious creator of his or her own life. That's we were born with that.
mm-hmm,
We're born with that desire. We're born with that orientation to ourselves and others. And that for whatever reason, and I've concluded it's just where we are in our evolution, that we're not, that's not obvious to us as we grow up. That we're little boy. I mean, look at little boys and little girls when, or consider your grandson Solomon. When these kids are just doing their own thing, they gravitate towards something they want to
mm-hmm,
do. They're
mm-hmm,
like, let's do the adventure. Let's play. Let's figure shit
mm-hmm.
out.
Yep.
And we get older and we sort of lose the power of that. And everybody does pretty much. So
Mm-hmm,
it's the way it is. But when I watch people in recovery work, whether it's intentional living or ACA or AA or whatever, I see the yearning. I see the yearning for that sense of relief or that liberation or that sense of healing. And every single person has it. I don't care how nasty they may come across or oblivious or whatever. I know that that person wants to be the master of her or his own life.
yes.
And sometimes people, I mean, most people, most of the time, people don't get that in this lifetime, but it's available.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that human beings have known this for a long time. This is not something that you or I just discovered. That humans figured this out thousands of years ago.
Yeah, and they wrote books and books and books and scriptures and scriptures and scriptures about how to identify the path or how to live well.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
It's
we stand
been
on. We've talked about this before, but we stand on the shoulder of giants.
yes.
Uh, people have been murdered
Hmm.
for sharing these insights. I
Yep.
mean, this is radical stuff.
Hmm.
Some
It
people,
is. Yeah.
and I've discovered, and again, working with people, that um, the tendency to murder to strike out against that liberator is actually our inner child trying to stay safe.
Yes.
That little kid, because the little kid's not rational.
Right.
He's also rational, but little Marty's not rational. He just wants to stay safe because he wasn't.
Correct.
And he figured out some kind of bizarre way to feel safe, addiction to adrenaline and other kinds of, self-stressing, because he felt he was in control of that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so now here comes the loving adult. I'm doing reparenting, and little
Yeah.
Marty's like, "Are you kidding? I don't want
Yeah.
that."
Right.
And so this is what I've learned in the work is to really be compassionate to the resistance and to learn to befriend it rather than fight it.
That's a very good point, that when I find myself in resistance to a truth, or it tells me that whatever I'm in resistance to, owning that is a step out of the cage, out of the box, out of the trauma. Um, yeah, yeah. So the resistance has now become like a flag man for me. Like, oh, there it is,
Yep.
SOS. There it is. Oh, another one. Oh, I'm gonna go in there. And I, when I contemplated bringing to the tree, I mean, to the point of cruelty and enjoy it. I know, no, don't ever say that out loud. Don't ever say that out loud. Oh my God. And then I did it, and in the presence of people, and I was scared, and and I can feel there's still more in there. And I could feel I intend to be kind. I intend to be gracious. I intend to build a capacity for unconditional compassion, mainly to myself. So,
Yeah.
wow.
So that's part of the way I've taught myself this is that whenever I see that some kind of resistant energy, um, and by the way, it's subtle. Sometimes it's like one way it manifests for me if I'm in a meeting and I feel myself starting to like fall asleep. That's
Yep.
resistance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've taught myself, what am I resisting here? What do I not want to hear?
Right. Yeah.
But I use the term, like I said a minute ago, it's like I use the term befriend. I intend to befriend that part of me that's resistant
Yes.
because it's me. And it's little Marty who really, really actually wants to feel free, safe, uh, adventurous, playful,
Liberated.
spontaneous,
Mm-hmm.
and in in the little kid's addiction to this adrenaline led basket of feelings, there's none of those things is possible. So I know he really wants this, and
Mm-hmm.
so, just like I know everyone wants to be the self-conscious master of his or her own life. I just that helps me develop patience and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't make little kids trust you.
No.
You can only treat them in a trustworthy way. So
Correct.
what is that? Consistency,
Mm-hmm.
consistency, patience, kindness, non-judgmental outlook.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I learned. It took me years, by the way, people. This wasn't like a one-off. This wasn't right after I had that aha moment we talked about earlier. This took time,
Mm-hmm.
but I've learned to apply those, set intentions to apply those dynamics to little Marty.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result of that, I don't. I mean, I'm not saying I don't have outbreaks of those that that energy, the stressful, self-stressing, adrenaline-fed energy, but it doesn't happen that frequently anymore.
And
And when
that's
it does, it's like I'm on alert. It's okay. What's going on? What's going
uh-huh.
on, little guy?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
feeling lonely or scared, and this is how you communicate to me. So okay, let's go. Let
I,
me
I
listen.
used I used to be consistently and pervasively in self-criticism, self-deprecation, or other deprecation, or other criticism, some kind of control thing. And that seemed normal to me.
Right.
And starting my way out, learning about accountability process, um, at first I used it. Somebody asked me today, how many times should I do this? Like every day. And I said, well, let's try 50. Let's start with 50 times a day, because that's what happened to me. Is that every moment that I had a thought, it was about judgment or criticism or self-deprecation, it was inundating. And as I go through it, like I heard you just say, it comes fewer and far between where I need to like own a judgment. And I find myself in this compassionate, accepting, listening. I see myself go out, yeah, oh no, listen all the way through, and communicating in a way that people around me feel safe instead of judged or criticized.
I've shared this before, but it's been a while. It was a year or so ago. I was working with the childhood trauma healing therapist I found, who really, really helped me with all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some of our trauma, at least for me, is so impacted down in the shadow that the accountability practice wasn't enough.
Right.
So I found somebody who had therapies, some of which, by the way, if you're interested, you can find in Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
about healing childhood trauma. Um, and I we've done a lot of work with her, and so one day we were just kind of doing fun. And she goes, "What's your purpose in life?"
Mm-hmm.
And so we did some work. She was like, "Your subconscious knows the answer to this question." So what we came up with is my purpose in life is to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I set that as an intention. I intend to have fun. So that space that you just talked about is filled with fun and joy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily like, woohoo kind of, it's more of a satisfaction and an appreciation. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm enjoying this moment,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing's going on, nothing's happening. I'm just enjoying it.
Yeah.
And that's again part of what we talked about. This is creating our lives intentionally, intentional living,
Yes.
intentional life, creating the life I want intentionally.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. We're getting close to that time thing too. I know.
Yeah. So 2024, I intend to live intentionally.
There you go. Me too. And then my anchor intent is I intend to come to a deep awareness of myself as a human being.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And mine is
Wow.
I intend to live a life of joy, peace, freedom, and health.
There you go.
But you got pneumonia.
Uh,
So,
so, and I found peace.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm returning to health.
Yes.
So that's again, we those of you who are watching this for the first time, we have uh, 4 different groups